I want to talk about one of the books that influenced my thinking about the radio business and how we are related to our listeners and to better understand how our medium, radio, and specifically music radio, how to understand better how it positions itself in the wave of portable music sources that our present culture has made available to everybody with a smartphone. Now, there's a word, position, how to position your product, your radio station in the portable music stream. It's a river now, actually. I don't know if the term is used all that much in advertising or the media world. You'll recognize it actually better under the name branding. That's what you do, you brand. Branding. But branding is more described in the book as filling a hole, and I'll get to that. The title of the book is Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind. Parts of the little thesis of the two guys that wrote it, they're a couple of advertising guys, Jack Trout and Al Rees. Parts of their book first appeared in the Advertising Age trade paper in 1972, and then they published their little book about it in 1981. It had a big influence on the advertising business. A lot of agencies would buy multiple copies of the book and then give it to all of their creatives on staff. It spurred a lot of interest in radio programmers, too, for we were beginning to face more competition. The American FCC had started allowing more stations, more frequencies to broadcast, and particularly FM frequencies had a lot of growth. From the 50s up to the 70s, the only competition a top 40 station had really was just another top 40 station in town. In that situation, the one with a more powerful signal was almost always the radio station on top of the ratings. Music radio blossomed on FM in the 1970s, and getting into the 80s, in Milwaukee, for example, where I was a CHR program director at the time, in Milwaukee there were 7 stations playing various pop music mixes, and each of those other 6 stations would be playing one or two or a handful of songs that were also on my playlist at the time. And I'm not including the country stations there, the urban stations. Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton were having top 40 hits. They were crossing over from country onto the top 40 CHR charts. And of course, R&B. There was always a lot of R&B in a CHR mix. And that was more competition than I had ever faced before. There is no school, there are no college courses for how to market a radio station. You got to kind of educate yourself and be in the belly of the beast and figure things out. I think you need to search out, find, and read books about media, all kinds of media, to understand how we all come together and where we fit in the mix. Now, the premise of positioning is that people can only retain and recall a couple of brands of any product. Take soft drinks. Coke, that's the number one position. Coffee, Starbucks. Fast food, McDonald's. Yeah. Trout and Rees quote a psychologist who had studied such things and said, the average human mind cannot deal with more than 7 units at a time. Ask someone to name every brand of a particular product, and the most that they can come up with is 7. And that is if they have a high interest in that product. For a low-interest product, people can usually come up with only 1 or 2 brand names. Trout and Rees picture the situation as a little ladder in people's heads. And the brand name at the top rung, that's the number 1 position. That's usually the one that got there first. You cannot take the number 1. Well, think of Starbucks. There was no national coffee brand until Starbucks. So you cannot take the number 1 position. If you're a challenger, you can't take the number 1 position from the big guy by attacking head on. You got to find a hole and fill that hole. One of the ways to do that is to tell the prospect, in our case the potential listener, what you are not. For an example there, the market has a solid and highly rated album rock radio station, and another station switches to the format. The established station has been playing a lot of in their mix, a lot of what would be called mellow rock, like James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, and such. The album rock challenger tells their listeners, we don't play that wimpy elevator music. We rock the city with AC/DC. You face way more competition for listeners' time and ears than I ever had to face. And it takes some brain power and some ideas and some self-education to figure your way down the path to radio success. The book is Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind.